Okay, so we're going to go and create a server-side session on the server side. So we're going to do with the back end first. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create our project. And this is going to be a student system. I don't know. Couldn't come up with something better. You want to make sure it's Maven. You want to make sure it's Java. You want to make sure it's a jar. You want to make sure it's 22. Big. So we have our typical dependencies. Now, because we added the dependency of validation, I do not wish to rewrite. I do not wish to rewrite the absolutely positively do not wish to rewrite the code. I'm going to leave validation there. We need to finally add spring session. Yay! And that's going to allow us to maintain session. Yay! All right. I'm going to go ahead and create it. Now we're going to have what we're going to call I don't know how to say this nicely. We're going to create like a BS controller. And you go, what do you mean? I'm going to show you in a minute. The other one over here is called school system, damn it. All right, so I can't just unzip it. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I was avoiding. We're going to go saved. And I realize now that it is all uppercase, which is not ideal for me. We'll leave that where it is. And then move that. This all comes from this class, believe it or not. And we can leave all that. All right. So very first thing, I'm going to extract it and I'm going to get rid of the one. Let's see what I mean in a second. I want to rename it and I just want to get rid of the one. Okay. Yay. Now I'm going to open NetBeans, of course. Do, 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 do. Monele. Oh, that's it. All right. Then I want to open student system. Okay. It's going to build it. It says that we want to run a priming build. We can do that now. Just clean and build it real quick. Now I'm going to show you a couple things. You might not care. But if you look in here, there's a couple of new login things here, session, a couple other things. Don't really care that much, but that's the difference. If you go into your POM files, you might look at those and look very carefully. If I added a few dependencies to my previous thing, I would have been able to do it. However, it's much easier to do it the way I just did it. Yes. So let's go ahead and open. Now we gotta go and saved. I believe it was school system. Because all these are there and important, I'm just going to copy them all and paste, refactor, copy them. Now, I did one kind of dumb thing. If you look at it, school system application, I copied that. I should not have copied that. I can delete that one safely. Where is delete? Refactor, delete. Bang, and it's gone. And you go, why was that okay? Because this student system application actually has a Spring Boot application and we have the student controller. Now, a couple things I want to talk about briefly. I told you we were going to create a custom controller that does nothing. Okay. And we're going to do that to do a login. So I'm going to do that to have a, we're going to call it a user, user controller. Okay. Did I do that wrong? Don't think I did. There we go. But I'm also going to talk about creating a user. We have to model a user. Much in the way we modeled a student, we're going to go ahead and model a user. So what is a user? Well, we have to have a username, right? Too much JavaScript, right? Then we're going to have a password. And let's have a full thing, yes? Then we have to identify some mechanism to connect the student and user. A couple of ways we can do that. The way I talked about in the previous presentation was simply put, I was going to have when the user logs in, the user is of this variety and so forth. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to connect the user via ID. And you go, wait, what? So we're going to have the username be their ID. When we create users, they're going to have a username ID. And that username is going to be a factor in here. We'll talk about that later. But we can go back to a user. So we're username and password. The only thing we need to do is provide administrative rights. And we're going to have Boolean is admin, right? And then, of course, we have to do the insert code. We have to do the getters and setters. We set them all. We're going to go ahead with the insert code. We're going to have equals, and we're going to equal only on username. I know some of you are thinking, well, if I put username and password together, that's going to complicate looking up. You'll have to have both of these. And then I definitely want these to print out the username, just the username. Okay. Voila. Now we'll go back in student, and I just said we're going to have a new field. Now, students sometimes have advisors. So can we do it this way? We certainly could. I don't recommend it. This is not a good way to do it. In a database field, we typically would have some mechanism to identify a specific user. In our case, that's a username. So instead of having the whole user there, we should just put their username. Yes? And so we say their advisor, right? Ta-da! Now, because of our posts and gets and all that, we're going to leave this off. We're not going to put, blah, blah, blah. But could we? Absolutely. But it's going to complicate things very, very quickly. So I do wish to leave it off right now. Can we put it in there? Yes. And we very likely will. But it's not necessary at the moment. So we can leave it off. And so there we go. That's how we're going to connect the student with the user. The user is going to manipulate the students. And so how do we identify a user from the username? Okay, so let's go to our student controller. No, instead, let's go to our user controller. In much the same way we did the student controller, we're going to have a series of users. I want this to be a REST controller. I have to identify that. It's totally fine to have multiple REST controllers. There's nothing preventing it or slowing it down. It makes it easy to do it. Do it. If it doesn't make it easier to do it, don't do it. Right? I didn't save this, and I haven't saved this yet either. So we're gonna have an array list of users. Nope, we can leave it there. And we're just gonna create two users. I'm gonna say this dot users. Oops, equals new array list. This dot use. Oops, let's create a user. User one. Set username. I typically do not like to be called Mike, so do not think that this is a explicit okay to call me Mike. Please don't call me Mike. But I do typically use this because it's a 4-letter thing. And right? So this dot users, we're going to add user one. Okay, I'm going to create a user two. Actually, let me create a user two. I don't usually create 3 users, but we're going to do it this time. I feel like I'm correcting all the wrongs and like when I do teach other classes. So bear with me. We're going to create 3 users, and this one's going to be Ruth, and also false. And I'm doing this because I can differentiate between Mike and Ruth, right? That's the actual reason. And then I'm going to create finally, I'm going to create a third user, and the third user is just going to be administrator. And it's going to be me, Ruth. And note that I'm not making complicated passwords. Why? I absolutely could. There's no reason not to. But for the uses of this demo, there's really no good reason to do this. So I'm just going to create 3 users. Bang, here you go. Boom. Now, not now, but later I might create a method that automatically does this. All right, so let's implement a login. Okay. So login. Response entity user login. And we're gonna go requests. Oh yeah, gotta go request body. This is not a get mapping. This is a post. Sorry, brain farting. And that of course means we need the we need the consumes bit as well. Yay! And that means I have to change this to value equals. By default, without a header, it just thinks it's value, right? So that's why you have to do these other things. And then I'm going back to user student controller, and I'm just going to grab it. Note I'm not validating, but I should. I absolutely positively should. I should be validating, but I'm not. And I'm doing a user. Well, we could do it if we have a few minutes. If we don't, I'm a little worried we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. All right. So the logged in, do. Okay. Yes. Now I'm trying to remember what else we need. This isn't it. I don't believe this is it. Nope. There you go. That is it. Okay. So we're going to use, I'm trying to think of the word. We're going to, I'm brain farting here. We're going to use injection to inject sessions into this method. We could have methods that use sessions and methods that don't use sessions, and that's what's going to happen. The student controller, none of these actually have anything to do with sessions, and so those work without the authentication piece completely. So what we're going to do here is users, oops, contains user, right? Username exists. Now, we're going to talk about this later, but we're going to talk about it a little bit as I go along. So the user doesn't exist. One of the worst things you can do, is provide too much information to the attacker. And you go, what do you mean? hate this. I have to do all these imports. Okay. Oh. Hmm. There you go. Even though we're dealing with authentication, we're going to say you're unauthorized. The user doesn't exist. We're going to say unauthorized. Password doesn't exist. Unauthorized. Any error from this is unauthorized. Why? We don't want to provide the password's wrong. We don't want to provide the username doesn't exist because then they can send a brute force attack to identify actual users that exist. So we don't want to do that. So any error is going to be unauthorized just for security purposes. If the users exist, we're going to go get the user. This dot users gets this dot users index of, and we're looking for the user. Go get real user. Once you have real user, we can check the password. Equals, no ignore case. We don't want that. Yes. Of course, I could have written this differently, where only success results in the returning the good result, right? So we know we're going to need to return a good result. Yes, so we know we're going to return an okay here. Yes, and user is fine. We're going to still give them back their own user that they gave us. We don't need to give them the real user. That might be presenting information they don't have. We don't want that. We only care about username and password. Otherwise, this would fail, right? And so we can authenticate it. We'll validate only the username and password. And that's what we'll do. We don't care about the administration, right? But we need to actually retain information about who is logged in. So what are we doing? We take the session and we set an attribute using a string user to the username. We don't need their password. We just want to remember what user it is. Now, here's a little bit of magic we can also do. And we're going to talk about this later, but we're going to get into detail here. Yes. Else, and I'm gonna explain why in a minute. Okay. All right. So we can't just check to see if the admin session attribute is set later on. We can, but we don't want to do that. Why? Because if you logged in as a regular user, and then you log in as an admin, then you log back in as a regular user, you'd still maintain the admin attribute, even though because it's not removed, right? Logging in as a new person doesn't change. It changes the user, but doesn't change the admin. So we need to make sure we're setting that. If we're going to have it, we need to set it for both admin and not admin and check the yes or no, not the whether or not it's set. We'll talk about that later. And my friends, that is it. And you're like, wait, what? That is it. That is logging the user in. And you're like, wait, what? Shouldn't it be more complicated than that? Maybe. All right, let's do a get mapping. And we don't need value. We're just going to set it to be home. This is garbage. We're going to get rid of this eventually. We're going to keep the login, but we're going to get rid of the home. So we're going to have a public Oh, we can keep a string. We don't need to do anything special. Go home. I'm just going to use the session. Okay. And we're going to use this to, let me add the imports here. If get attribute user, right? Go get the user. And of course, this is going to be a string in almost all of our cases. This will be a string. Else, no one is logged in. Right? This is just going to tell us whether or not somebody's logged in or not. Yes. Finally, I want to do one more get mapping. And it's going to be a log out. And this does not need a return type. We're going to use this a lot. There we go. All we're going to do is session dot invalidate. And what this does is anything, any attributes, any values set, it's just going to wipe them out. It's just, they're gone. Oh, I have to return. You return an empty string. Doesn't matter. I might return space just to make sure that the browser doesn't interpret it weird. Okay. Then you're like, wait a second, why would I do this? All right. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to hit the same thing. And then we need Postman. So I'm going to load up Postman because otherwise we won't be able to see that. It's difficult to see headers and that sort of stuff. Okay. So the very, yes. So Windows Firewall, after the most recent Windows update, just decided that it didn't like any of my things. So this is the homework. Close all tabs. Let's go create some new ones. All right, so localhost port 80, 80, 80, 80, 80, and I forget what it was. Students, right? It's the students. Okay, great. Now let's get home. Home's going to be actually served by the other controller. No one's logged in. You're not logged in. That session's not, excuse me, that session's not valid. User doesn't exist. Can't get it, right? So let's go ahead and go with the post request. Note that we don't have a mechanism to get a user. You're, wait, what? We don't. There's no mechanism to create a user. I don't want a mechanism to create a user. So we got to kind of do some trickeration. Not really, but we go username, Mike, password. Oops. Let's just do it the right way. Mike. And I get an okay. Note, I can send this 50 times. I'm going to get an okay every time. Notice returning it is admin false. But note, I want to just show you something really quickly. It's never actually sending my user. It's just sending me. He's sending me my user back. Yes? That's because the user actually has it. So it's sending it back, but it's actually giving it an admin. We don't care about that. But if we wanted to prevent that, we could actually create a subclass of a user and correct it so that it only sends the appropriate thing. Now let's send some bad stuff. Unauthorized. What about, that's authorized, right? Okay. What about red? Red, also unauthorized. All these users don't exist, right? That's what we want to see happen. Let's go back to Ruth. And we didn't go home yet, but we can see, oh, it thinks Mike's logged in. Wait, Ruth is logged in. Okay. And we look at the headers. Oh. Yeah, there we go. And the headers there. So headers here. Here's our J session ID. It's a part of a cookie automatically sent, as we can see. It's just going to identify it to me. And that comes, let's see when I log in. Log in, oops. Oh, it's unauthorized when I log in as Ruth and Ruth. Why is that? What? Why is it unauthorized? Okay, something weird is happening. Hold on. Okay. I don't want to look at the body anymore. Ruth. All right, let's just screw around here. Did I not set that Ruth password correctly? I think I might have set it incorrectly. Let's double check. So user, nope. Ruth, yeah. Man, do it weird. Let's do it again. All right, you can see that the bodies, it says it's false, but that should be an admin. But anyway, we're gonna go in and back and set this back to Ruth. Ruth, and it should be, it still says it's unauthorized. I don't know. Tell you what we can do though. Oops, I don't have a logger on here, do I? Let's go add the logger and see what's going on. So I didn't make a lot of, we talked a little bit about my going a little fast, but I didn't have a lot of errors. Oops, I put that in the wrong place. We didn't have a lot of errors, so whatever. So this is useful. So let's go ahead. So this is the user controller class, and we have our logger, and we're good. Okay. All right. And so we're going to put here a log, or is it logger info, and then we're just going to put the user. That's all I'm doing, is I want to print the user. Ooh, the user right now is just printing just the username and password. Let's fix that. I want the username and password. So yeah, don't need to be the admin. We just okay. Ooh, I think I know what I did wrong. Very likely. I think I know what I did wrong. Yeah, hold on. No, user one, user two. Okay. That's what I thought I did. I thought I just didn't add the user. Okay. Now I need to stop it and restart it. So this is clearly an error. You ever notice something weird? Don't, hey, it's working for some things and it's not working for others. Screw that. Go figure out why it's not working. Always. Okay. Everything should be producing what you think it should be producing. Okay, so I want to do something else. It's got the username correct and the password correct. So, oops, we're in user controller. So great. Okay. So what we're going to do, I know. We're going to log the users that are actually in the database. So let's do that now. And you go, why is that? Something odd is happening. And the oddness is not obvious, unfortunately. So Mike, me Ruth, null, null. Yep, user two is null for some reason. Yes, look, I set user two. I never set user three. There you go. There you go. So there is no root there. Always fix it. Simple errors like that take hours to fix. If you get more complicated, right? If I was in an actual method and something was going wrong, I'd be freaking out, like, oh my God. But now look, Mike, Ruth, me, Ruth, right? Now when I log in, it works. Note that me, Ruth was only logging in as myself. And you go, wait, what? It was only logging in uh, um, as a regular user, never as an admin. Okay, great. So we have that working, and then we can go back to home. We see we're logged in. And then we're gonna log in at, oops, leave that as that. And then we're gonna log in as Ruth. Oops, I want to do that. We just want to get rid of the EE, the ME. Bang, bang, we go here and it correctly identifies who it is. And it's J session ID is how it actually manages it. Right? And it's going to change that every so often for security purposes. I just want to show you a couple other things, just in case you thought that was not happening. The go home. We're going to go ahead and right. Did I say that right? Admin. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get that attribute as well. Oops. We got a plus here. And so this is going to work the way we want it to work. We can identify what a user should be able to do and what a user should not be able to do. Obviously, we have to do authorization. This is simply authentication. But so we did Ruth, and then you can see it's not an admin. Login is me, Ruth. And that should be an admin. Yay, right? This is simply authentication. We're identifying to the server that we are a user, and that is all we're doing. We are not actually doing anything. The session ID, all the data is stored. How is the data being stored? Inside these attributes for sessions. We're using strings, and I'm storing strings in there, but these can just as well be full-fledged objects. It just makes it simpler to keep strings in there for our purposes. We don't need any complex things. In Amazon, we might want to keep the item number and the quantity as an example. So it makes sense to do it, but for our purposes, we never need anything that complicated. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll go ahead and start working towards getting those students connected to the advisors.